let's focus on our third topic of the night. Let me pull my agenda back up. And we are talking about Rose Namajunas and Paul Felder. Now, she's openly talked about her struggles with continuing to fight and whether or not she wants to stay in this game too much longer. I mean, she's still rather young, but she's talked openly about mental health and her anxiety issues if she wants to stay competing. Then on the flip side of that, you have Paul Felder, who recently announced his retirement while in the cage after fighting Dan Hooker in Australia. Now he's kind of walking that back, saying that he would like to fight again if another big battle comes along. Let's talk about these two individuals here because there's been a frequent, I want to say a consistent thought that if fighters are openly talking about and thinking about retirement, they should go ahead and go through with retirement because it takes away from their ability to adequately prepare from fights. Looking at what Namajunas and Felder have both accomplished in the cage, do you think that that idea applies to them? Should we be talking about them in a way where they should be not necessarily, I don't want to say forced to retire, but the people close to them should be talking to them more about retiring because they're already having these thoughts out loud. Are we looking at that situation, or will we see these two individuals both back in the cage and competing at a high level?
Well, the thing about Paul Felder is he's got a lot of things going on. He's great on the microphone. He's got a good personality. He's smart. He seems to have other avenues, even within the sport, that he can exploit and he can use to get his career going or to maintain money or to be involved in the sport. So that's the first thing. But the most important thing is Paul Felder, and he said this, and a lot of guys say this, and as they come closer to the end of their career, a lot of guys start to change their tune on this. But the thing that Paul Felder has always said is, I'm not in this sport to take beatings or to be in fights just to be in fight. I don't want to just be fighting nobodies. I don't just want to be fighting just to stay busy or to keep my to make ends meet. I'm doing this to A, be the best, and B, fight the best challenges. Even if I'm not the best, I want to be facing name quality guys who are going down in history, guys who are the biggest names here. He has a specific purpose and goal in what he's doing. And he said if he can't do that, he's not interested in just fighting. But at this stage, he's gotten to the point where he's beating all the other guys, he's beating the rest, but now once again he's getting to a position where he's unable to beat the very best guys he's facing. When he fought Edson, he lost to him. Who else did he lose to? Mike Perry would have been a guy he lost to, who would have been one of, even though it was a welterweight, would have been one of the better, bigger names he faced. He lost to him. He lost to Barboza twice. It's like he's lost to people who would be considered the elite of the division. And now he fought Hooker, who to a lot of people was also considered to be the elite of the division. So basically at this stage, he's almost fighting just to fight because he's not beating the elite guys. And after a loss against Hooker, what's the chances of him getting another elite guy to fight? He would get like a Ally Quinta or a Benil Dariush, guys who were good fighters, guys he respects, but guys who aren't name fighters and they're not considered all-time great. He wants names, he wants elite guys, and he's been trying to get them for the better part of the last year and a half. How many times did he call out Justin Gaethje? Not because he disrespects Justin Gaethje, but Justin Gaethje is considered a big name. Justin Gaethje is considered a true test for elite guys. Justin Gaethje is considered an elite guy himself. He wants those kind of names. He wants those kind of opportunities. He's not just going to fight just for the sake of fighting. And if he's not going to fight just for the sake of fighting because he just loves fighting, his ability to stay active is going to lessen dramatically because there's not a lot of guys who are ahead of him. He doesn't want to take any steps backwards. So if you don't want to take any steps backwards, and you don't want to fight anybody who's not a lead, and you don't want to fight anybody who's not a name, that essentially means you can't fight 75% of the division. So to that regard, even if he's not retired, he's kind of retired because he's saying he's just not taking fights just to take them. He's not going to stay busy. And if you're not going to stay busy, how do you stay up in the ranking? How do you get bigger names coming off a loss? Unless somebody falls out and you come in late and take over a fight. How do you get those names? You're not putting wins together. You're not constantly fighting. How do you get back to the position where you can get a named fighter if you're not going to fight anybody lesser and build yourself back up because you only want names or you only want elite guys? How do you go about doing that?
I don't think you do.
So that to me that's problematic. As far as Rose, I think Rose when she got the title, she realized it wasn't. And I'm just guessing. I don't know her like that. I think having the titles, like Ronda Rousey said, it's a little bit different than you think it is. Because a lot of it isn't preparing and fighting the best. It's dealing with all the extra hangers-ons, all the media promotion, all the attention and energy you have to waste on things outside of fighting. I think that got to her. And I also think she's a smart woman. She understands the reality of what she's doing. She's Pat, what's his name? I can't remember his last name. Pat I can't remember that. But her boyfriend's a kickboxer and a former fighter, MMA fighter. She's very aware of the results and the consequences and the risks that come with this. So I can imagine her not wanting to overstay her welcome, especially coming off of the kind of loss that she had. It's one thing to get submitted. It's one thing to get beat up. She got like power bomb. Like, she got really stopped, really hurt. And I think it really changed her perspective on how much of a risk she wants to put herself through both training and actually fighting these caliber of opponents. She had never lost like that. And I think that kind of loss really shook her confidence and made her think, how much longer do I want to expose myself to these kind of risks?
All right, so I think that's it for our topics today, man. I just wanted to also touch upon, did you see this fight that was announced? Ricardo Lamas is fighting Ryan Hall in Oklahoma City, and this is it was just announced today, May 2nd. So here he is, I guess. So what I did not know is if a fighter, let's say Ryan Hall in a situation, is looking to fight and he is consistently getting denied by his opponents. Did you know that the UFC has to pay him out based on the terms of his contract? I did not know that. So
wait a minute.
For a situation,
so if he can't get fights, they have to pay him his contract.
So and this is and I didn't get a chance to research this, but I was listening to a couple of podcasts that talked about this. So Hall, for example, was offered, if he's offered multiple fights, he signs and his opponents deny or decline the fight. If it goes on for an extended period of time, let's say a whole year, the UFC can't find him an opponent. They have to pay him out for the number of fights he's promised in that year. So let's say he's promised 3 fights at $60,000 each. They got to pay him $180K.
Wow, I did not know that.
That's pretty interesting. So Hall finally gets a fight. He has not fought since I think Darren Elkins was his last fight back in July, and he's only fought twice since December 2016. That's stupid. I'm gonna pull up his record real quick because
the fact of the matter is he's a high risk, low reward guy. You beat him. He's not highly ranked. He's not highly thought of by the majority of mixed martial arts fans. But you lose to him, and it's a complete collapse of your ranking. So I can see why people don't want to fight him. It doesn't make a lot of sense for you monetarily. There's not a lot of money into it. Fame wise, there's not a lot into it. But if you lose, it's a tremendous setback. It is a tremendous setback.
So Ryan Hall joined the UFC in 2015, where he defeated Artem Lobov at the Ultimate Fighter, and he has fought 4 times since then. Once in 2015, he fought in 2015. He fought a year later, on December 3rd in 2016. Fought 2 years later, on December 29th, 2018, and then he fought in July of 2019.
Yeah, the big thing is he's also in that situation where he fought lower level guys, and now he's trying to get named guys, and nobody wants to take that risk. So he starts being avoided because, like I said, there's no benefit to beating Ryan Hall. Beating him is just, I want to fight, and it doesn't do much for you. Losing to him is catastrophic for your career, as far as the ranking, as far as the money you can make, as far as your chance of getting big names and moving ahead. So I see why guys don't want to fight him, and I can see why the UFC is probably maybe paying Lamas a little bit extra to take this fight, because they don't want to have to pay out anybody. And this makes a lot more sense to me now when I hear guys say they're signing all the fights and they're not turning anybody down. Because if this is true, it's in your best interest not to turn anybody down, because if nobody accepts the fight, you get paid out for not doing anything except accepting a fight. So this makes a lot of things make sense to me now when I hear how fighters approach, you know, whether they take a fight or not, or they're always saying, I'll fight anybody. If that's what you're doing and you can't get a fight, then yeah, this is a very smart thing. They're either going to get you the fight you want or they're going to pay you. Either one's fine with a fighter, as it's very hard to come by money and it's very hard to come by high quality fights. So either way, you're going to get what you want one way or another.
True. So
before we go, I wanted to talk briefly about. I know it was a little while ago about the Carolina Kovacevic issue. I just wanted to make a brief comment.
Sure.
I do not. Everybody always gets mad at me because I'm always picking on MMA camps. But the thing about it is, you were paid to train and develop a fighter, not just to write off their skill set or write off their physical tools. Because at some point, if you don't increase the skill set, they're going to get figured out. They're going to start losing. Even if they're not taking punishment, they're going to start losing, which means they lose money, means lose rankings, often lose the length of their career due to the fact that they can't adjust or they can't become adaptable. Or in the case of fighters who rely solely on physical tools, when those physical tools hit their wall and they can no longer be carried by them, those fighters burn out very quickly. They burn out so fast you don't even remember their name. In the case of Carolina Kovacevic, that's what her camp did. They mistook it. They, for some reason, thought that she was the caliber of durability and caliber of athlete that Jessica Andrade is. And instead of diversifying her skill set and kind of changing up her approach, kind of using her durability and her volume and her physicality as a launching point and building off that so she had different ways to bring those things to bear, all they did was lean heavily on her ability to take punishment, her ability to push the pace, and her ability to get in close and beat people up. And at a certain point, that just stopped being enough. And as a result, now that she doesn't have that durability anymore, it's affected her aggression, it affects her volume, it affects her cardio, and she doesn't have anything to fall back on. If she is not going forward throwing at you or going forward getting clinches, she has nothing for you. Nothing in mid-range, nothing in long range, nothing inside. And not only is she getting exposed badly, she's taking life-altering beatings. In her last 2 or 3 fights, she is just getting beat pillar to post. And it's not because she doesn't want to be better. It's not because she doesn't have a warrior's heart. It's not because she's not a fighter. It's because her camp has not done their job and prepared her appropriately. Your job is to coach and develop somebody to win. And your second job is to coach and develop them well enough that even win or lose, they take or can navigate or manage the amount of damage they take during their career. They have done neither. They haven't given her the skills to win. They haven't given her the skills to make it through fights without getting career-altering damage. And those are the only 2 jobs they have. They've relied strictly on the ability that she can outpace people and she can walk through anything. The same Carolina we see now is the same Carolina we saw 3-4 years ago when she fought Rose Namajunas, and it was barely enough to beat Rose then, and now it's not even enough to be competitive against these younger, stronger versions of herself. So once again, we have seen that MMA coaching and MMA training has shortened another career of a at least at a certain level world-class opponent. Somebody with her durability and her cardio should still be a factor in the division, but because they've allowed her to plateau and in some cases decline as a fighter, she's not even a top 15 fighter. She really shouldn't be in the UFC at this point. She can't defend herself against this caliber of opponent anymore, and it's depressing to see, and it's quite embarrassing. And it makes me think that a lot of people don't take women's mixed martial arts seriously. Some of these game plans and some of these supposedly training they're doing with these girls, 2-3 years later, these girls look like the same fighter they were, if not worse. And this is a prime example of it. Her career has been shortened, if not ruined, by sloppiness and lack of dedication and I guess lack of knowledge. Because if they knew better, I guess they'd show her better. And she hasn't gotten better at all, and it's basically costed her career and any possible chance she had of being a title contender or a world-ranked fighter. And I'm just sad for it, because this isn't a sport you should shortchange somebody on, especially somebody who's so willing to take the kind of fight and take the kind of punishment that fans so often love. She deserves better than that, and she hasn't gotten it, and her career is probably close to over, if it's not over already.
So do you think she is done in the UFC?
They might keep her because you can build the name off somebody. Somebody can look really good about her. But I'd have a hard time putting her in fights against physical, strong, athletic girls. She can't defend herself. If she can't physically manhandle you, bully you, she has nothing. I mean, let's be honest. Against Rose Namajunas, she did some work in the clinch. She landed some punches. But what's the biggest thing everybody remembers about that fight? how much punishment she took and walked through to get to those clinches against Joanna Jędrzejczyk. What happened against that fight? We remember that one knockdown, but you know what happened after that 20 seconds and before that 20 seconds? She got her ass whooped. For 5 rounds straight, she took a beating. She had no answers, no technical answers, no adjustment, no growth. She's been the same fighter for the entirety of her time in the UFC, and it's finally caught up to her. And now she doesn't even have the durability to get her hands on these girls. And she has the skills to defend herself, and it's just gonna get worse. And I'd rather them just cut her and let her go to a lower class of fighter before she really gets hurt. And she already had the damage to her eye. It's not gonna get better. Those things don't get better. Ask Miesha Tate. Ask Josh Koscheck.
So did you see the last fight she was in where she got bludgeoned?
Yes.
Yeah, it was definitely pretty bad.
Couldn't block, couldn't parry, couldn't control distance. She didn't use front kicks. She didn't use side kicks. She didn't have a jab. Like, she did literally nothing but walk towards this girl throwing punches and kicks and got lit up. Her only hope is that she's going to bully her and out volume her. Except this girl, who also is not very skilled, is basically a younger, bigger, stronger version of Carolina. And Carolina's a faded version. By this point, Carolina should have developed enough seasoning and poise to pick her spot and outsmart a girl like this. But because she hasn't been properly developed, all she has is her toughness. And her toughness, it ain't what it used to be, which means she's just reduced to running into punches and getting beat up, and we're reduced to watching it for 15 minutes. 15 minutes of watching assault, basically. That's basically it. We just watched an assault for 15 minutes. That wasn't even a fight. That was a one-way beating. It was not competitive in any instance.
Well, I agree with you there, sir. I definitely agree with you at that point, sir. So I want to move into our final segment where we are doing show questions. We're finally getting into the habit of pulling in some questions that we get from our listeners, and we have two today, two pretty simple ones. We've kind of touched on them during the show today, but the first is from MTF the third, 1 through Roman numeral 3. And it's, what should the UFC do about men's flyweight division now that the group still doesn't have a champion? How much you handle that one, Schwan?
Well, what they should do is maintain their commitment to it and be a professional organization, get more fighters in there, rebuild the division, and keep it going. But UFC is not always very professional, and they don't do the right things all the time, and I think they're just going to leave the division to die. I think if enough people say they don't care about it, the division's gone. But I believe they should. If they're gonna fight tooth and nail to make the featherweight division a thing, they can give the flyweight division a little more rope. There's a lot of excellent flyweight fighters. It's not like there's a lack of fighters. There's a lack of fighters in featherweight. There's not a lack of fighters in flyweight. They just choose not to pay them and choose not to bring them in because they don't want to. It's a personal choice. They don't want to. You know, it's no more popular than when Henry Cejudo wasn't a big name. It's no more popular than when DJ wasn't a big name, and they kept it around then. It's just a matter of whether Dana White chooses to bestow his blessings upon the flyweight division to allow it. But what should they do? Keep the division, rebuild it, rebrand it, and keep it going. What will they do? Probably let it die. Probably leave it to drown in the ocean.
Leave it to drown in the ocean. In my opinion, I think that they should they should build it back up. Because I think they should. I think they should build it back up if they're going to be serious about it. If not, let them all go. Let them go find some opportunities in some other organizations and stop holding them hostage. But I think we need to be honest about the fact that this division was underserved when you look at them compared to other weight classes. And that actually kind of leads us into our second question, where we're being asked whether or not why isn't the women's flyweight division talked about the same way as the men's flyweight group? And I think a lot of this really hinges on the fact that Valentina Shevchenko is their champion. Valentina is a champion that the UFC wants to promote. They want to push her to the forefront. If they could, they would get her back into a fight with Amanda Nunes as quickly as possible. And the fact that they have a marketable champion that the demographic of MMA fans will watch. Now, we don't know exactly how much they're watching her, but they know that they're pushing her in a way that would cater to that market. That plays a big part in that division sticking around. I mean, she's eviscerated Jessica Ai. She pounded out Caitlin Chukagian. I don't know what special finishing move she's going to hit or Joanne Calderwood with, but we know that she's just continually chopping them off one after another. I really want to see her fight Roxanne Modafferi, but that's just because I want Roxanne to kind of surprise us all. But that's neither here nor there. The women's flyweight division has a champion that the UFC is getting behind, or they are behind. So that's why this division isn't being managed the same way as the men's flyweight group.
Well, I think that's part of it also. But I mean, outside of Valentina, because I don't know how actually marketable she is when we get down to it. I don't know how marketable she is. I don't know that she sells a bunch of pay-per-views or she's a big star. I don't know that for a fact. But one thing I can say is the flyweight division has multiple fighters who move the needle. Once again, you have Paige Van Zandt. She hasn't been active. Paige Van Zandt is a name fighter. She moves the needle. Macy Barber isn't a huge star, but people are invested in Macy Barber. Valentina Shevchenko, people are invested in her as well. And then, like you said, Roxy Modafferi. While she's not a huge star, she's like a cult star. She has a lot of fans from all over the globe, all over the world. And while she's not wildly popular, she has a steady fan base. So they have 4, 5, 6 fighters who have legitimate fan base. Even Rachel Ostovich, not the greatest fighter, but she has a fan base. Some would say a very creepy and perverted fan base, but still a fan base. In the men's division, outside of Joseph Benavidez, they didn't really have anybody who really struck a nerve with fans. I'd say Roxy Modafferi is more popular than anybody else in the men's division outside of Joseph Benavidez. I would say Paige Van Zandt is more popular than Joseph Benavidez. You know, they have a couple people with some name value, with some cachet, who they can either sell fights on based off their length of time in the sport. Someone like Roxy Modafferi. You have Valentina, Rachel Ostovich, Paige Van Zandt, who play up the attractiveness. I guess Macy Barber to a certain degree, but they have avenues that they can sell them in. And plus, I hate to say it, but when you're dealing with women fighters, you can always play up another aspect of it, which would be the looks, that appeal. And so I think they have more ways to appeal. I think they have more interest, even though I don't know that their division is quite as competitive as the men's division. And the men's wasn't very, but you take Demetrius Johnson out and you have a very competitive division. If you take Valentina Shevchenko out, I don't know if this division is really all that competitive anyways, to be quite honest. I mean, there's really still only 1 or 2 girls who is really good enough to hold the title, in my estimation. So I think that's why they don't catch as much flack. One, because of the multiple avenues that having female fighters provide you. Some excellent and professional, some, let's face it, just quite tacky. And also, there's a certain aspect, I think, sometimes when you have certain groups in a position of power or they're doing something, it avoids criticism because you don't want to seem as if you're against that group. And if you go too hard against a women's division, somebody might say that you're sexist, someone might say you're misogynist, and nobody wants to deal with that, and nobody needs those kind of problems. I mean, those faceless avatars on Twitter don't mind it, but people with real faces, with real names, with real careers don't want to be attached anywhere near that. So I think that's another reason why the division doesn't get nearly as much flack as it would normally, because it starts sounding like you're being sexist. It sounds like you're taking a shot at women instead of just making a comment about the quality of the division and the quality of the fight.
Interesting thoughts there, sir. Interesting thoughts. And all of that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to talk about closing out this episode today. Why don't you let everybody know what you're working
on? I'm going to do another character, live action character breakdown. I'm going to do one for Daredevil. I'm going to do one for Black Widow. She's got they have a Black Widow movie coming out in the next month or probably 2 months. And I think we're going to be coming up on the anniversary of the Daredevil TV show. So I'm going to actually, like I did with Captain America, like I did with the Green Arrow, I'm going to treat these live action comic book characters like they're fighters to a degree. And I'm going to break down the techniques they use, the strategies they use, and the hows, what's, and whys behind them, why they use those techniques and why they use the strategies, and kind of treat it like I would treat a fighter, and kind of something that the mixed martial arts fans like, because it's legitimate breakdowns, legitimate techniques, and comic book fans like because it's somebody taking something they're very passionate about very seriously and treating it with a certain respect that they don't often get from people who consider it to be fantasy and not real and uninteresting. So I'd like to think that I cover both bases. And as far as the show, I'm hoping we can get Cindy Marisek on at some point. She used to be a sparring partner, training partner of Valentina Shevchenko, and Valentina is going to be fighting JoJo Calderwood, another noted striker outside of mixed martial arts. So maybe we could get a world-class striker, a person who's trained fighters as well, and get a woman's point of view over one of the biggest women fights coming up in mixed martial arts this year.
Okay. All right. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and close this episode out. Schwan, I appreciate you being back on. Let's make sure we do what we gotta do to get you back on the show.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. I said it on Twitter before. I appreciate this man greatly because he is very dedicated to these shows, very dedicated to these podcasts, and he wants people on the show and he wants them giving their best, and he's allowed me to, through my distractions, to still be a part of the show and not give me any flack, never give me any issue or make me feel guilty about it. He's always been very accommodating, very supportive, and that's what you want in a friend, which I consider him, and what you want in a co-host, which he obviously is. So I just want to say another thanks to you for being that kind of person, because not everybody is, and I appreciate that.
Well, sir, this show has been going on for almost 5 years now, and you've been here basically for the whole time. It's been either you or Roy Billington, who's our first co-host, and we need to get him back on one day too. But
definitely,
this show wouldn't be here without you on it. So let's go ahead and keep doing what we're doing, and let's continue working on growing this show. But with that in mind, man, we're gonna go ahead and close out. Thank you everyone for taking the time to listen to our content. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and we will be back next week. Good night, everyone.
All right. Good night, guys.